Here we go. Have we got some fire for you guys today? We've got a member of the crew that is riled up and ready to rock and roll. All right, here we are. Jeff, you were fired up today, brother. Like I'm sitting back and I'm going, yeah, like this is what I'm liking. This is, we're going to talk about Black Friday, Cyber Monday, some of the numbers that came out. But before that, I'm wondering what Jeff feels, how Jeff feels. And Dean, I'm sure you and I are both wondering the same thing, like how Jeff really feels about drivers not doing pre and post trip inspections, trailer pools, being caught where drivers aren't really doing what they should be doing as a professional driver. So Jeff, in a very loving way, I'd love to hear what you think about this.
It's bullshit. I'll tell you that right now. And I'm telling you, I got a passion about this because there's many different things that happen when drivers don't do pre-checks and post-checks on their assets when they go into either a consignee or a shipper, or they're in a drop trailer facility. There's many different things that occur that for some reason, these fucking idiots out there, and I'm just going to be blunt as hell, don't understand the reasoning behind this. One, they put themselves in jeopardy by not checking out and making sure that their tires are safe, that they're not bald, that their directional signals work, that the hinges on their door are workable, that their glad handles and their airline brake hoses aren't cracked. I mean, I could go through a plethora of lists. And there's a big thing here. You see, when you try to protect your assets and you go into a drop box facility, you have to do the pre-check and the post-check for one reason. Once you drop that box, it's now in the possession of the yard horse driver who's going to move your assets from that space to the dock. You do that pre-check on that to make sure that your asset is in good shape, that there's no problem, because once that's picked up by the yard horse driver and pulled into the dock, and that dock supervisor goes and inspects that trailer and they see a hole in the skin. Well, guess what? It didn't have that when you dropped it off because you did the pre-test and, pre-walk test and the post-check on that. So it's so vital. And plus, why would you leave that for the next driver to take care of it and fix it? All right, you're putting your fellow Americans in jeopardy on the road.
Hey, whoa! What about Canadians?
Well, Canadians too. It doesn't matter.
Oh, thanks that we're a secondary thought.
No, I mean, I got this huge passion. It just doesn't make sense for it. And one of the biggest baffling things that I've heard, I'm sorry, I don't do that because I don't get paid for it. Bullshit, man. Take responsibility. Be accountable for your assets. You're driving it. Your company brand is on the road. You're pulling a customer's brand on the road as well. If something happens to you on that highway and you take out a family of 4, I'll tell you what, as a broker, as a shipper, I don't want that on my shoulders, knowing that I just loaded a really bad trailer that caused a fatality. Hell no. If I found that out, I'll tell you, you heard me say it before, guys, I don't fire carriers. Carriers fire themselves, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I do it.
I don't know if you guys heard about the dolly leg that fell off like 7-8 years ago, I think, on the 401 heading towards Windsor. Somebody got killed, maybe even 10 years ago now. Probably it was a while ago. Somebody got killed because a dolly leg fell out, hit the ground, and bounced up through their windshield. And it's interesting because it was on the news and like it was going around the industry and all this, and then nobody reported it. But I always said, right when I heard it, I go, well, the driver's going to show up somewhere and go to drop this trailer, and there's going to be one dolly leg. So like there's no hiding the fact that they know that they've missed a dolly leg, and you put 2 and 2 together. How many dolly legs go bouncing down the highway on average, right? So it was, I know when I was at Transcend, safety and security was huge. And we would have mobile units go into some of our trailer pools just to do inspections and safeties. And it was expensive. Like trailer pools, you mentioned one thing there, Jeff, where a lot of the damage in trailer pools is done by yard jockeys.
Absolutely.
Right, the ones that just come. I mean, just with that yard truck where the whole back end lifts up, and they don't even have to mess with the dolly legs, just kind of pick it up and go. And those guys move fast. Like in some of those areas, especially some of the bigger companies in the US that have hundreds of dock doors, these guys are flying, man. Like I always thought they were skilled. But right, I mean, we've picked up trailers where there's been a tire slash, like an entire slash in the side of the trailer, which looked like what would happen when you're parking a trailer too close and you don't have cut your corners well enough and da-da-da-da. So been there, done that for all of it. And you know what? There's another part to it for all of you watching and listening. If you don't do a pre and post trip inspection, and if you're running a trailer pool as a broker and you don't have those on file, the shipper will never pay for the damages because you have no way to prove it.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing when it comes to trailer pools, right? Because when you're hauling somebody else's trailer, what's the best thing to do? Pop the trailer brakes instead of using your own brakes, right? Like tear the trailer brakes apart. So, there's way different levels. And I would hope that anyone out there that's doing a trailer pool would have and demand these pre and post trip just to keep track, because that can get very costly very quick. And it's a lot of he said, she said.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, if you're a shipper, why would you want to ship your product on someone that's irresponsible? If he's irresponsible, it doesn't say a lot about the company that he works for, because the company is accepting that irresponsibility of that driver, and it gives them a bad name. So, I mean, seriously, I think a lot of brokers out there and shippers don't think about this, and it's so important. I mean, I don't know. I mean, seriously, I mean, Dean, if you had assets and you had a power unit and you were moving assets, right, and you were left a really shitty trailer for you to pick up a load, wouldn't you be furious?
Well, furious, and I wouldn't move out of the yard with it, because I know that where in states where you need probable cause to be pulled over, the first thing they look at is the trailer, because that's where the trooper comes up behind you on. Most of the violations and out of service violations are going to come from the trailing equipment.
Yeah.
Certainly, you can start with air hoses frayed at the tractor to trailer, the 7-pin, but you can find a plethora. I love the reference to that movie, that famous movie. What was it called? The Three Amigos?
Three Amigos.
Yes.
I don't think you know what a plethora means. I think that's... So, Jeff, I've been talking about this on social media with some guys, because every trip I go out on in my truck, I'm doing a lot of GoPro work for my social media platform. Every, maybe 8th or 9th drayage trailer, I see the landing legs almost on the ground, not wound up.
Or bent.
And it's kind of, so there was a big rollover here a few weeks ago, and a car went speeding by on the inside lane, a pickup changed lanes into the path of the speeding EV car, and then both cars got tangled up, and the pickup went under the front of a loaded gasoline tanker. The gasoline tanker rolled, and luckily the driver got out. I know the company, they're a local company, no fault of the drivers whatsoever. And we were having this discussion online about the standard of driving, because something has changed fundamentally in the way car drivers drive in the last few years. But also truckers, I went out to Philadelphia. So I did a 7-hour run to Philadelphia weekend before last, 7 hours down, 7 hours back. You see a lot of crazy stuff through the tri-state region. And it's not just car drivers, Jeff. You know how bad car drivers are through the tri-states. But I saw some stuff that truckers did that it makes you embarrassed to be part of the industry, because they are doing such damage to the industry's reputation. But worse, they're taking risks that defy logic. It's like they have no life preservation skills, and so there's a dumbing down of drivers that's occurred. And I saw it years ago when fleets were designing technology down to the skill level of drivers. And the way that you do that is you put automatics in, you put cameras in, you put all this technology around drivers and provide this safety net, because the standard was getting lower. Now, did the standard get lower, or did companies just train drivers to a lower standard? And I think
it's a very good question.
I think it's a bit of the latter, because it gets to pre-tripping. right? I don't do pre and post trips because I'm doing them all the time. Every time I get out of the truck, I'm looking for stuff that breaks.
How long does it take you, Dean? Seriously, how long? 5 minutes?
You walk around the whole thing every time you get out of the truck. You walk around. Like a good pre-trip should take you 10 to 15 minutes if you're doing it properly, checking all your fluid levels, your air leaks, water leaks. But I there's a habit, and I think this is more because in the outback of Australia, if you break something, something little becomes something big over the course of a few hours, and it's a survival strategy, right? So finding things, a small crack in a spring hanger or a loose U-bolt, like finding those things in a routine inspection could save you hours and days and thousands of dollars. So,
or your life.
And I've figured out how to do that stuff on the fly, but I know a lot of drivers don't do it because they watch them get in their truck and take off, not even having a look at anything that's going on. But we talked about this offline. I think one of the real indictments on the driving industry, and I think it gets to why they will jump under a trailer that's got problems with it and not do a pre-trip. It's the standard of drivers that think it's okay to take their 30-minute break in the fuel island while there's other drivers sitting behind them. I'm not going to say it's an epidemic level, but it happens far too often. It's probably one of the most talked about subjects on social media. You've now got drivers pulling the fifth wheel on these drivers and I've seen them. I've been behind a couple who got out of their truck, weren't fueling, didn't fuel, walk inside, have a shower, and then buy food because I was curious. I walked in behind them to see what they were doing. And they weren't going in to pre-authorize their credit card to come back out and fuel like most have to that don't have a fuel card. But you're in and out of the fuel island should be in like 10 minutes at most to fill both tanks. So to take a 30-minute break in the fuel island is so disrespectful to everybody else. But when you call them out, there's this FU mentality. It's like there is no camaraderie on the road whatsoever. And there's a whole standard of drivers that think that behavior is okay. Worse, then you've got the middle lane gang. And this gets to the dumbing down of drivers because fleets teach these drivers to stay in the middle lane, to merge, just pull out in the middle of traffic and force it. They're actually taught to do this because it's safer to sit in the middle lane, because I'm convinced drivers lack the skill to drive as opposed to steer. Right. So, I think I'm in and out of different lanes all the time based on the movement of traffic, but I would never sit there and hold up everybody just for the sake of it, because what's happening now on that 7-hour trip to Philly, it's probably the worst getting out of Massachusetts. But what was happening, and I'd never seen this before, guys. Normally you'd see someone sitting in the middle lane at like 63, and then everyone's going around them in the right-hand lane, in the granny lane, right? On this trip 2 weeks ago, they're in the inside lane. We're 3 lanes wide.
Yeah.
And the signs say no trucks in the left-hand lane.
Are you coming down 90? Are you coming down 90?
Yeah, coming down 90. On at 84, and there's driver after driver in the left-hand lane now, like in the hammer lane, passing the middle lane guy. So I'm thinking, how is it safer to sit in the middle lane? Anyway, I digress, but it gets to the standard of drivers out there that we're having this conversation about how to load trailers, how to check trailers, how to do pre-trips. I just don't understand the logic of going out on the road with something wrong where
there is none.
Stuff can, even if you do a pre-trip check, something can break, right? Something breaks.
100%.
Yep. Absolutely.
I always made my drivers and paid them in Australia to wash their own trucks, because a sponge on a chassis will show you a crack or, anything will pop up when you're washing the trucks, right down to, when we'd fuel the trucks, I had a hose running so that you hose the wheel bearings to see which ones were hot. Because the steam that comes off the wheel bearings is a hot wheel bearing. Because on the next trip, that's a tire fire.
That's a good point.
So just little things like that I just don't see. Even if you taught it to drivers, I just don't think there's the interest, because there's the industry does a terrible job at taking drivers from a job to a career. And there's a chasm there, right? Yes. Because I'm convinced there's a lot of steering wheel holders out there that are just driving a truck between other jobs.
Steering wheel holders. I love that. Not even a professional driver. It's a steering wheel holder.
Really baffling too
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's funny, but it's effing sad when you see these a-holes out there, and on the back of their trailer it says, "How's my driving?" And I'm like, are you effing kidding me? This guy's all over the road, and he got a phone number that says, "How's my driving?" It's
so
like,
here's something for both of you. When I was going through treatment, we were going to Toronto every day. It's about an hour and a half drive there, an hour and a half drive home. So you see a lot in that 3 hours, specifically going into the city and the amount of trucks. We got cut off by trucks. Trucks were closing roads just because the driver decides this is where they want to stop and all this stuff. I must have made at least 3, if not 5 calls to companies that had trucks that had the thing on the back. How's my driving? This is our phone number.
Yep, that's right.
Every one of them was like, okay, we'll definitely get back to you. Thank you so much for letting us out. Not one person called me back because I said, I want to know what happens. Like, I'm in logistics. I'm just saying, the driver of this that has this trailer right now, we're beside him. This is the truck number. And I'm literally speaking to them as I'm driving by. And I'm going, this is what they just did. So I don't know if he's frustrated. I don't know if he had a bad time at a shipper, but just an FYI, this is what just happened. And okay. And if you don't mind, get back to me. I'm in logistics. I'd like to know something happened. Now, not that it's mandatory they get back to me, but I guarantee you
nothing's happening.
Nothing's happened. Probably half the time they weren't even spoken to, because God forbid they get spoken to and the driver says, okay, I'm going to go to another company. But there's something to be said. And I'll share with you guys a story that happened to me. So I get a call from a customer one day and he says, is this our stuff? And it's a link to a BC news station. And I click it, and they were in this customer was in the quartz industry. So we had 5 by 10 foot slabs of quartz. We had 106 on a B train flatbed that went from Ontario to Vancouver to northern BC, and it was coming across the bypass in BC. And I'm looking and I'm like, it can't be, because this product is all over the highway. And you're talking, 8 by 5 sheets of quartz that are like 3,000 pounds a piece. Yeah. Like these things can do a lot of damage. So long story short, it was their product. They sent it, and the only reason he knew it was his product because he saw the sticker tags for the color on it, knew it was his. We lost 56 slabs because one A-frame disintegrated. So here, for all of you out there, here's where pre and post trip come in handy. The customer was like, your driver didn't secure it properly. And we're like, at first sight, you're like, yeah, you didn't secure it properly, right? So we go talk to the driver. The driver had a full detailed, he actually he went a little overboard. And I think because he was nervous, he drew a diagram of the trailer. He showed where he strapped it and everything. Police get to the scene. The straps are still intact. The A-frame imploded underneath the slabs. So
welding broke.
But
it was actually, so even worse, it was a wood A-frame they loaded on the trailer. And so my driver was like, listen, I've never hauled this before. Our bad for putting that driver on it or not asking the questions. He said, so I never even questioned the wood A-frames. Now, here's the thing. We move stuff with wood A-frames all the time. All the time. None of them imploded. We realized afterwards that the guy in BC that ran the DC in BC, he says, I've been telling them to stop using those A-frames for almost a year because they're getting wobbly, right? He goes, it's just a matter of time. They're gonna crack. So if the driver hadn't done his pre and post trip, and if he hadn't done his job, that claim would have laid squarely on the carrier. The insurance, the customer wouldn't have accepted. So because of that, and because the driver did his job with pre and post trip, commented on the thing, wood A-frames, asked the shipper if this is normal. He said yes. Told me the A-frames are good. Like, he put all of this on the bill of lading because he was very detailed. It saved an actual massive claim because we agreed to split it. So the insurance company, the carrier saved the insurance company and everything. But I just think what could have happened to the people driving behind
Right.
that. Like already the publicity of having your product scattered across the road is not very good publicity. I know another friend of mine who owns a trucking company where they had a trailer lent to another carrier because of a trailer pool, and that carrier stuck it under a bridge, literally tore the top off the trailer. So he was very quick when that post hit social media to say, hey, listen, FYI, this is not our drivers. Like another company was driving and like made sure to point out that it wasn't this company's driver, because that looks horrible, especially from like a PR and a integrity and all. It just looks horrible. And so, it's super important that that reputation gets maintained. I'll share with you something else, and then definitely want to dive into today's topic. You talk about pre and post trip. I think pre and post trips are almost mandatory, even in your vehicle. I could tell you, I've been stuck in the woods on a snowmobile trip because the person I was with, the sled he was on, sheared a shock right off. And we spent 7 hours at -30 in the bush, had to build fires and everything, waiting for somebody to come get us. When I brought that sled in to get fixed, the guy said, this shock's been broken for like a month. He goes, you see here's the brand new cut. This is the old one. So you could see the crack that had rust in it. That shock was ready to go. I never did a pre and post trip inspection on my snowmobiles at that time. Now, every time before I go, I might not do it when I get back because I might be tired, but every time before I go out, I'm checking out the shocks. I'm checking the A-arms. I'm checking the hood. I'm checking the panels. I'm checking everything I can physically check, besides opening up the engine and looking at the pistons, but I'm checking everything I can physically check. I've been riding with my wife and bolts on my suspension have dropped out because of the shaking and rattling. Like it's incredible what can happen. And my wife and I, just 2 years ago, stuck in the middle of nowhere on the side of a highway with the wind howling in at us. We're like, now you're calling somebody to come pick you up. It's not just trucks. It's everything. If you don't, even if, pre and post trip in a car would be a little difficult, but if you have a vehicle, take it like this. You have a car and you notice a slow leak. Before you go anywhere, you're always checking that tire.
Absolutely.
Right? So why would you not check everything in order? Because you want to get home as a professional truck driver, or you want to get to the destination to get back home, to make your pay, to do your job. Why would you not want to do it in as much peace as you can have? Like getting something broken on the side of the road is a pain in the ass, like a huge pain.
Understatement.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and that's why it's called PMs, guys. Periodic maintenance.
Oh, I thought it's preventative maintenance.
Periodic or preventative is same thing. You're trying to prevent something nasty from happening. And if you look at, the things that you can look at quickly, you're ahead of the game. You don't have to break it all down. That's for the mechanics to do all that kind of stuff. But when you're on the road, check, man.
But in logistics, this is a service failure, right? You're late. Yeah,
absolutely.
You're late on the load. Like it's just something you've got to do. I do a pre-trip and post-trip on my John Deere yard tractor. Like when I mow the lawn, like if this stuff breaks, it just I think this whole notion that drivers don't do pre and post-trip checks because they're not paid, it just makes no sense. But just when I say it, I'm not surprised when I see the way drivers behave out there. So capacity's loose. I don't know why they do it. There's plenty of other options for shippers and brokers, and they will fire themselves as you say, because if they don't do it, that's a black mark against them.
Well, here's the thing too, real quick, and I know we'll get into other things. To your point, Dean, that you said some time ago, especially in the soft market, that they're one breakdown away from bankruptcy.
Right.
And right there, folks, is one of the reasons why they don't do it, because if they find something that's taking money out of their profit, and they can't afford to do it because they're extremely tight, and that's bullshit if you're thinking that way. That is not the right mindset to have. Whether it's a good market, a soft market, you need to take care of your assets, regardless of the fact.
And there's a lot of you guys don't know how to wrench either. Like I'm not the best mechanic, but heck, I can swap brake linings, brake shoes, brake drums. I can probably put some universal joints in and out at a pinch. But there's a lot of guys out there that don't know what to look for. They don't know what, water on the ground might mean, and they don't know how to look at water and sniff it and see if it's fluid coming out of the, if it's diesel or oil or hydraulics. Like, it's liquid on the ground. What is it? And if you've got to put your finger in it and smell it.
$300 fix could prevent a $30,000 or $45,000 new motor.
Right.
Or a multi-million-dollar accident with lives.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
That too. It's ridiculous.
So,
right.
I mean,
all right, let's get into the meat.
Yeah, because I think we hit that hammer to death. We nailed that nail in the coffin pretty good. So, Diener.
Yeah.
Geez, I've been really excited to hear this. Monday, Wall Street Journal's posting 2.5% increase MasterCard said in shopping, in spending on the weekend.
Yeah.
That wasn't Cyber Monday numbers. That was Black Friday numbers. Two things I think about right away. I'm thinking, okay, are people really spending more? Or do people not have the cash? So they're using credit cards to allow them to manipulate their cash flow through the holidays. Don't know what that answer is, but I immediately see that 2.5%. So I immediately say, okay, awesome. Like, retail's coming up. Then I know Cyber Monday numbers, and then you have some numbers, and you sent me an article or a reference this morning. So I'd love to get into that, because obviously, knowing everyone watching and listening, this isn't a direct relation to all of a sudden December, you're going to have 30 loads a week instead of 5 loads a week. But it's a good sign, I think, to see what people are doing and how people are spending. So
certainly, the National Retail Federation had a call yesterday, and I listened in, but they were very pleased with the results. In fact, the number of people that went out shopping were higher than what they survey thought there would be. They estimated 182 million shoppers would go out over the 5-day shopping period. The number ended up at 200.4 million. So almost 18 million more people shopped over the 5-day holiday weekend. Real mix of online. To your point about using credit cards, Dan, it's probably split 50-50. I'm going to say 50-50, just eyeballing the data here between online and in-store, because online, obviously, Cyber Monday is more online, which would involve credit card, whereas Black Friday was more in terms of online, in-store visits.
Brick and mortar.
Yeah. So, Thanksgiving Day, 35 million versus 22 online, 35 million store visits, 90 million on Black Friday versus 76 million online. Saturday was even at 58 million apiece in store versus online. So I think the fact that there was more people going out shopping, regardless of what method of payment they used, was a really good sign for consumer confidence. And that's what the NRF was looking for. Of course, that doesn't automatically translate into more demand, as you say, because a lot of this freight's already been moved into distribution warehouses. Right. But I think as a measure, we've got a Toys for Tot, the Marine Corps Toys for Tot drive on Saturday here in New England, a big truck show, and collecting toys for kids. And I went online to see if I could get some 0 to 2 year old toys ordered yesterday, thinking, I could be here by Friday. The nearest they can get anything to me that is Monday the 4th. So to give you a sense of how busy the DC replenishment process is, Amazon couldn't offer anything on a Tuesday better than next Monday for delivery. That's a really good indicator of how busy they are and how backed up they are on the replenishment side of things. So it's a good sign. I think there's consumer confidence that'll give us a bit of a lift in the market. Rates are predicted to go up another 10 to 15 cents a mile by the end of the year for both dry van and reefer. Again, that's fairly seasonally normal. But I do think, and I did read a good story yesterday, I think that there's a general consensus that the inventory wear down or inventory drawdown is kind of reaching the end of that cycle. Werner intimated that as much yesterday on their earnings call. They thought that the shipper inventory destocking, and I'll quote, has mostly finished, but it is yet to experience a restocking wave of consumer demand. So things are still soft, but their take on, Dollar General is their biggest customer. I think it's about 16% of revenue. So they're pretty close to the inventory restocking. They think it's sort of reaching that nadir as some others have suggested. But that still means, though, that a lot of the volume that we're seeing moves through online and brick and mortar is inventory that was in warehouses and we hauled some time ago. So it's not sort of net new freight that we might be hauling. Still very soft out there. I did see one other data point, Dan, and this is sort of, I know we're up on time, but the Journal of Commerce have a very interesting truckload index they've built going back to 2006. What they do is they measure truckload capacity of the large publicly traded carriers by counting the number of trucks they have at the end of each quarter. And they've been doing this since 2006, right? So this gets to why rates are soft and flat. And in truckload, so they indexed it to 100 in 2006. I can't remember what the freight market looked like in Q4 of 2006, but that's the index point of 100. So if you say that was the capacity we're going to benchmark the current quarter off, the current quarter is 89% of what it was in the fourth quarter of 2006, right?
If I remember correctly, 2006 was a good year. I mean, meaning it was like no major hiccups, no massive volatility,
yes,
no major spikes, none of that. If I remember correctly, because we opened Teamwork in 2005, and by 2006 we were close to 25 million in sales.
Yeah. So in 2009 it dropped to 80%. That was the Great Recession, right? The industry shed about a quarter of its capacity. Then I remember I was working at Qualcomm at the time. 2012, 2013 freight recession dropped to 73% of 2006, and I'm getting somewhere with this because it gives you a real feel about why truckload carriers have been, I think, slow rolling their hiring and turning over some older trucks and not putting as many on the road. If we're at 83% at Q3 just ended, when the pandemic hit, we were at, wait for it, 83%. So in Q2 of 2020, we're at exactly the same level of large truckload carrier capacity as we were then, as we are now. Very interesting data point. So that kind of confirms where the industry's at. We're shedding a lot more capacity, I think, in the smaller fleets. Larger fleets have moderated their capacity levels down to where demand is. Rates are certainly bottoming out, but I think their comment about the shipper inventory destocking is mostly finished, I think, is reasonably accurate. I can't say it's not accurate. I think it's accurate. It resonates with what we're hearing in the market. So that's sort of the summary of the 5-day weekend shopping bonanza.
I think it's a great summary, guys. I mean, personally, I think it's showing great signs. You know, I was actually worried about, because I'm listening to a lot of salespeople and a lot of people talking about struggling hard and you know, really tough year and can't find their footing, and you know, there's all these stories, and you always hear the bad over the good, I think, always, you know, for the most part, because people want to share the bad and then they kind of keep quiet when it's good. But seeing that spending trend and saying to myself, wow, like this is good. This is good that this is happening. So I like that. I think, you know, obviously there's a couple of pieces, interest rates, all that kind of stuff that needs to change before we see a total turnaround. I mean, I know they're talking about that in the housing market in Canada. It's a huge topic right now in Canada about how many, you know, I guess projects, I'll call them, for housing are kind of paused, on hold, canceled, because the interest rates are just way too high for people to hold that while things are built and stuff. Right. But to see the shopping and to see, you know, I mean, you got to think about it, right? Because it's probably US statistics.
Yes.
Right. So, yeah. So you got an extra 200 million people, or what was it? 84. So you get an extra 20 something million people shopping that kind of weren't shopping last year, which is super cool. Then, you know, you take Canada in, and if Canada's a you know, 20% increase, that's giving us some serious confidence in the retail market for sure.
We need it.
Yeah, good sign. I think it's but I still worry about the first quarter. You know, I'm still pessimistic about what this looks like. I see carriers exiting the industry. I think for the marginal carriers in the spot market, this is a perilous period of time for them. I'm seeing, you know, local trucks with for sale signs in the window, people that have been driving the wheels off their trucks for 3 years, sitting, trying to sell their trucks, talking about, you know, November was supposed to be the money-making month, just completely, you know, vaporized. They just didn't see anything. So I think there's a bit of a purge still to come. Of course,
I think it's also needed, Dean.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I know we talk about
Yeah.
this an awful lot, and it's which is good, but I really think that things like 2018 brought a whole bunch of new carriers in. COVID brought a whole bunch of new carriers in. And I think it's just like in the salespeople world, right? Like we hear a lot of salespeople now talking about, oh, it's slow, it's slow, it's slow. And my first question is, well, how much did you sell during COVID? And they're like, oh, I didn't have to. The phones were just ringing. And I was like, that's why it's slow. So I do think we need this cleansing, because I think in these times,
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you both will agree that the people that get weeded out are the weak, which is the strong is left. And when I say strong, I'm hoping most of the people that don't have the desire to serve always consistently at higher levels, the desire to really help customers achieve their supply chain goals, I hope they get weeded out, both on the brokerage side and the carrier side, to be honest with you, because it leaves more room for everybody that has a dedication to making this industry better come alive. And I think those are I shouldn't say I think, I really hope these are the people that survive, right? The good ones where we can come back to and I mean, the one thing about this industry is it's never been about collaboration. It's always been about everything's secret. I got to keep my customers secret, because God forbid, what customers I have, then you're going to go chase them. And I do think we need to get back to collaboration, which is why I love this show for us on Wednesdays. It's because that's all we talk about is collaboration. Like there is no competition. We are a multi-$100 trillion industry or something, $178 trillion industry. Like we're literally, what are we now? 19% of the GDP. So it's like these numbers are astronomical. There's enough in it for everyone. And I do think that as within most industries, cleansings are needed. I think COVID cleansed out a lot of companies. I think they, like all of these things, I think happen for a reason. And we've been through these cycles before, and if we're still here, it means something.
Not to the degree this last freight cycle was off the charts, both on a high and a low, but it wasn't like we didn't predict this would happen.
Yes.
Right.
No.
We
didn't want to predict that this happened, but another segue, and we were talking about this, Dean, not so long ago, about the return season. Since everything is up, right, on e-com and brick and mortar, and to your analysis earlier, I'm really curious what that return season is going to look like come, late January into February. That's going to be
But if you notice, Jeff, though, one thing about the return season, and one thing I've noticed, and it'd be interesting to get data on it. Yes. But one thing I've noticed is as you switch to e-com, there's always more returns, because when you're going to brick and mortar, you're trying the clothes on, right? I know my wife has returned a lot of things that she's bought on Amazon for the kids and stuff, because she'll get them. The kids will try them on. They're like, oh, it's a half size too big, because they were a size like 9.5 shoe or whatever the case may be. You order clothes and it's delivered, and it's like, well, this is nothing like what it was supposed to look like. I think that that's a natural increase by doing online. But also, you look at
validation centers too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look at Amazon and Kohl's, and you can just name all of them where they've got these strategic alliances to return their goods. So somebody's got to pick them up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about mass packages being returned.
Yeah, huge. Well, I mean, I know for us, like with our Amazon, they say either bring it to the post office or they actually send UPS or FedEx here. Right. And it's like, I'm thinking about like just my Prime membership, for example, right? Like, I think it's like, I don't know, $100 and something a year.
Yeah.
And, and like, I'm pretty sure I use it up in the first month. So it's a lost leader for them. And then the returns, right? And it's another lost leader, but it's really, I'd really be interested.
Think about it too, Dan. Yeah, think about it too. Remember when we used to return it, we have the UPS label or FedEx label, and we give it to the local guy. It's not true anymore, because now you got, like I said, those consolidation centers, because just imagine the truck going and picking up all over the place. Now they just go to one place, a strategic regional drop-off area where now they just send in one truck instead of stopping at 117 residential areas. They go to one. and
You know what,
pick it
Jeff,
right
you're
up.
absolutely right, because they're saying go drop it at a UPS or FedEx drop location.
Right.
Or yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, that's one
there are
thing that has
fees.
changed with the returns. They used to come direct
Yep.
to your door.
Yep.
And now
Exactly.
they're saying, okay, go here. And it's funny. My wife was returning something to Amazon, and she got the UPS label. She called UPS. She said, I'd like to schedule a pickup. They said, well, if you want to schedule it to your house, it's going to cost you $3.
Right.
And she's like, for what? It's an Amazon return. She goes, no, well, you're making a scheduled pickup. So it's instead of bringing it to a location
Right.
where you can just drop it off, if you want it to come to your house. So they're also changing their methods, where they're saying, well, hold on, you're going to pay us directly now it's $3, but you're going to pay us directly $3 to UPS direct to pick it up at your door, because maybe that's now no longer covered under the Amazon contract. I don't know. I don't know what
Right.
I'm just speculating, but yeah, interesting. So we'll get return numbers probably mid-January, you think?
Probably further than that, I would
Probably
think.
later. Yeah.
Later, right?
Yeah.
Oh, because then Christmas, and then people start returning kind of first week of January, because they don't take returns on Boxing Day or New Year's Eve or anything like that, right? I know here, anyways, a lot of stores won't take returns on specific days.
But they give a specific date on that. Remember, when you get that, it tells you if you want to return it, you have to return it by such and such a method, by such and such a date. Yeah. So they already know, and they do that for SG&A costs. When you think about the labor that it takes to go through all of these, that's why they give these date sequences: a Monday and a Tuesday and a Wednesday and a Thursday. So they know the volume that's coming in on each one of those days, so they can strategically, operationally take that workforce and put them in those areas on specific times during the day. And that's one of the reasons they do that.
Yeah. Awesome, boys. Any closing remarks here before we skedaddle for actually the last data day of November?
Yep.
Yeah.
What do you know?
This was an explosive segment. It really was.
Well, Jeff, I mean, a little bit had to do with your language. I got to be honest, but you know.
Hey, I got a passion, man. I tell it the way it is. If people don't like it, that's fine with me.
Yep. I am with you on that one, brother, for sure. You know what? There's you do have passion, my man, and I love you for it. And you know, it's all coming from a really good spot, which I really like. You know, you're constantly you don't defer depending on who you're speaking to, right? So I honor you for that as well.
Thank you,
anything coming up, boys, that you want to share? Or
no?
We're all good. Yeah.
Busy time.
But, interesting. We've got the Logistics Managers Index comes out. I think it'll be out maybe Tuesday. We've got Zach Rogers from the University of Colorado. He's the author of the Logistics Managers Index. He's on our show Tuesday. We should cover some of the data points, because the index is a diffusion index of 8 different data points, including warehouse capacity, supply pricing, transportation prices. Really good data points. So it'll be a good show next Tuesday.
Next week, why don't we do a summary of your Tuesday show, Dean?
Yeah. The LMI
and kind of share, with all the different stuff that you're finding out on Tuesday. I'll tune in Tuesday for sure, but then let's do a summary Wednesday.
Yep, let's do that.
Done.
All right.